Hey YouTube, what's up? This is Ben from the Be a Photographer channel, and in this video I'm going to very simply explain layers to you and why you would want to use Photoshop sometimes over Capture One Pro or Lightroom. You can do a ton in those applications for photo editing, but if you want to put two or more images together, you have to use Photoshop because it has layers. Now, before we hop in, let's think about layers in two different ways. One, this outfit. I'm wearing a jacket, a t-shirt, and also a hat. If I wanted to change just one thing, I could take off my hat and put on a gray hat instead of a red one. If I wanted to change my outfit further, I can take this layer and essentially delete it, and now my outfit is different, and so our output image is different, right? If I wanted two hats, I could put two hats on at the same time and think of these as layers. Now, if you like to cook, think of it as making a chicken salad. If you cook the chicken by itself, you can marinate it, you can season it, you can make the chicken however you want, and then you can add the other ingredients in a bowl, whether that be lettuce, tomatoes, onions, cucumbers, bell peppers, olives, whatever you add, those are all individual layers, and you mix them in a bowl. Think of Photoshop as that bowl, that area where you can put all these things together. So let's hop in and look at this image that I shot of a Lexus RX SUV interior. This was actually made up of a couple different images. Now in this video, we're going to keep it very, very simple. So I'm just going to teach you how to open a file in Photoshop and add layers. But just so you can get a sense of what I did here, I had one image where I had the light for the interior, but you can see that it was way too bright outside. Then I had another image where I had a good exposure of the exterior, so the mountains in the back, but it was way too dark inside the car. And so I mixed those two together, and then I also did some cleaning in Photoshop. So if you see these poles and things outside went away, did that in Photoshop. That'll be in a further tutorial, but I put those two together so that we had a nice overall exposure. And then I used what are called layer masks to adjust the image. If you want to learn about that, subscribe, but for now I want to show you the basics. So, how do you open an image in Photoshop? Well, you go up to File, Open, and then select your image file. So, File, Open, then go through your desktop or your Pictures folder, wherever you have your image, and you can open the image. Now, once you have your image, how do you add a layer on top of it? Well, that is super easy. All you have to do is find the image that you want. So for instance, here I have a file called YouTube logo PNG. I want to put this YouTube logo on top. All I'm going to do is drag it from Finder by clicking and holding on it, drag it on top of Photoshop, and boom, there's my layer. Now, when you add a layer on top, it's going to give you this transformation box. And if you grab the corner, you can change the size of it. So let's say we want to put this YouTube logo in the window. We're just going to resize it here. Once we like the size that it is, we're going to hit enter on our keyboard or this check mark up here at the top of Photoshop. So I'm going to click the check mark, and there we go. That is how we add a layer from another image file. Now let's say I wanted to rename this from YouTube logo to YouTube sign in the window. All I'm going to do is double tap on the layer in our layers panel in the right corner. I'm going to write YouTube logo in the window. And now I have that layer. And the cool thing about layers is you can move them around. So let's say I had an image of birds that I want to add. So I have an image file of birds here, and I'm going to add it. And I want the birds to be behind the YouTube logo. Now, how do I do that? Well, I'm going to hit enter to add the birds here. But if I want them behind, all I have to do is take this layer, which is called Flying Flock of Birds, because that's the file name, but I could just rename this, again, by double-clicking and making it called bird. And I can simply drag it below the YouTube layer, and now you can see it's behind the YouTube logo. So if you've ever done PowerPoint and done arrange, send to back, this is the same thing. You can control the layers. You can see if we put the birds below the background layer, it won't let us. You cannot put anything under the background because then it won't be visible. Now let's say you have a lot of different layers and you want to turn them off just to see what it would look like without. Let's say we don't want the YouTube logo, but we don't want to delete it because we might want it back. All we do is we turn off the layer visibility by clicking this little eye icon here, and we can turn the layers on and off. Now, if we've already positioned something and we want to change it, like we want to move the birds to this corner of the image, how do we do that? You can hit the controls here at the top left. This is the move tool. Or you can hit the letter V on your keyboard. So I'm going to tap V on my keyboard. Whoops, while I have that layer selected. And now that I've hit V, you see I have this move tool, and I can simply click and drag and move this layer around anywhere that I want to. So I can move the birds over here, I can move them down into the car into the center, I can move them over the YouTube logo, wherever I want I can move this. And if I wanted to resize this layer, I can hit Command T on my keyboard for the transform tool. If you're on a PC, press Control T, drag the corners, and then we can resize as we wish. So we can make it really small, we can make it really large, we can make it huge, move it over this way, hit enter, and there we go. Now keep in mind, if you want to make something really big, you're going to need a big image file because you can't stretch things too far, otherwise they become pixelated and you kind of see the edges. Now let's say you want to make this small, so we're going to make it small, and you want to zoom in just to check that it looks good. To zoom in Photoshop, all you have to do is hit Command or Control plus sign on the keyboard, and then while you have the move tool selected, you can hold space and it gives you this hand icon, click down and drag, and now we can position these birds with accuracy. Press Command 0 to go back to your full view, and there you are. Now, let's say you want to make a new blank layer. You just want to make a note for yourself or for somebody else that's going to edit the image for whatever reason. Very easy. In the bottom right, we can go to the Create New Layer button, which is this plus sign. It's going to make a new layer. We're going to double click. I'm going to call this Note to Self. Also, if I want to create a layer with a keyboard shortcut, it is Command Shift N. So Command Shift N. It's going to make me a new layer. I'm going to hit enter, and I'll call this Note to Self Keyboard Shortcut. And now let's say I want to brush an area so I don't forget to edit it later. I'm going to hit B for brush, select my brush color here so you can see that it's orange. I'm going to click on that orange box. It's going to give me this color selector tool, and let's say I want to make it red. So I'm going to select the red, click OK, and now with the brush I can draw by clicking and dragging on my keyboard. So let's say I wanted to fix this screen here, right? I want to do that. I'll put a little arrow to it, just draw it. And so now I know that I want to look at that later on. And I could even write fix, right? Or black out, whatever I want to do. If you want to do a note to yourself or you just want to mark up an image, could it come in handy sometimes? And then when I don't want this layer here, I can simply turn it off with the I tool. And if I fix it and I'm really done with it, I can just hit delete on the layer, and now that layer is gone. And the last thing I want to show you is layer masks. I'm going to do an entire video on layer masking, but it is a very helpful tool. And the reason is you can erase part of a layer without getting rid of the whole thing. Now you might think, why wouldn't I just erase it? Well, it's nice because if you mess up, you can bring it back and you always have the option to change it. It's essentially non-destructive erasing. So let's say on the YouTube logo, I'm going to hit the layer mask button here in the bottom right, and it's going to create this white rectangle here. Now if I select a brush by hitting B on the keyboard, and you'll see that the color changed to black automatically, if I brush black here, it's going to start erasing away this part of the layer. And if I want to bring it back, I can hit X or this vice versa tool here, and I can brush white and it comes back. Now the cool part about this is you can use it for things like the bird layer to erase just some of the birds, right? So if I wanted to do this on the bird layer, I'm going to select the bird layer, hit layer mask, brush, and change my color to black by hitting X. And let's say I just want to get rid of this big bird here, right? I want them all the same size. I'm just going to brush black over that bird, and there it is. If I brush white, it starts to come back. So I'm going to brush black again. The bird is gone, and that is the beauty of layer masks. So that is an introduction to layers. Open your file in Photoshop by hitting File, then Open, and selecting your image. If you want to add another layer, whether it's a PNG or a JPEG file, all you have to do is drag it over the file that you have in Photoshop. Then you can move it around and transform it to make it as big or small as you want. Hit Enter to place it, and if you want to move it, click V on your keyboard, and then you can move it around wherever you want. And if you want to resize it again, just hit Command T and use the arrows in the corners to change the size. If you want to make a new blank layer, click the new layer button in the very bottom right corner. And to rename a layer, double click on it and rename whatever you want. You just type it in and click enter. If you want to make a note to yourself with a brush, hit B for brush, and then you can write by clicking and dragging on your mouse or your trackpad. And if you want to create a layer mask, just click on the layer mask button down here, and then brush black wherever you want to get rid of it. So if I want to get rid of just the letter U, I'm just going to brush black here. And again, it hasn't erased it because if I want to bring that letter back, all I have to do is brush back in that area, or even simpler, I can turn off the layer mask by right-clicking, disable layer mask, and now it's all there. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you learned from it, please leave a comment down below. I really appreciate you watching, and let me know what tutorials you'd like to see next. See you in the next one. Peace.